All right, and welcome back to the Black Psychologist Podcast. I am one half of your host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. I appreciate everybody being here. And of course, I'm not here by myself. I'm here with the styling, the profiling, the limousine riding, jet flying, Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you,
You
good
terrible.
brother?
You terrible, man. You terrible. See, you got the shirt on. See, you got jokes. You know what I mean? I like that shirt, though, bro.
Appreciate that,
What's
bro.
good with you?
Chilling,
What's up with
man.
you, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Like again, we at the top of the week again. So here we are getting ready to do our thing, man. But everything is good. How's everything on your side?
I don't know, man. You threw me off with that limousine. You threw me off with that. Very crazy,
There you go.
No,
Yeah.
I'm good, man. I'm blessed, man. I'm chilling. Obviously we're gonna get into it in terms of we got some unfortunate news this weekend, so we're gonna get into it. So my radio been going crazy, but other than that, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do get into it, absolutely thank you for everybody listening and watching on YouTube. So like again, just to update, in addition to us on the YouTube channel, we thank everybody for commenting and watching and listening and subscribing. We're also on all of the podcast networks, the iHeartRadios, we're at the Spotify, we're at the Google Podcast, we're at the iTunes Podcast. So just make sure that you tune in. Episodes update weekly as we're pushing them out. So we appreciate everybody listening. But first and foremost, we definitely, unfortunately, had a loss in our hip hop community in the hip hop culture. We lost a great one, DMX, aka Earl Simmons. Unfortunately, passed away this past Friday, and thoughts and prayers go out to his family. First and foremost, I can't imagine what they're experiencing and what they're going through right now, because it's definitely a tough loss for them. So I want to send my condolences out to their family and his friends and anybody he was connected to. But yeah, it was a tough loss, man.
Yeah, definitely, man. X, one of my favorites. A hip hop heavyweight legend. Yonkers, New York. Rough Riders, all that. Just like a staple when it comes to not even being funny, but in terms of like my childhood and just growth. I remember seeing him live. I believe at Summer Jam or Howard Homecoming, or probably both. You
Yeah.
know, so just a legend, man. You talk about classic albums like It's Dark and Hell Is Hot, Flesh on My Flesh. Like
Two
these albums,
albums, yeah. Two
and we
albums in
know,
1 year.
yeah, man. Like I mean,
Yeah.
back in the day, like like we talking about hip hop heavyweights. You know what I mean? And it's crazy because what I was thinking about today when kind of just his music been all over the radio. I was thinking about ODB too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And because I think when ODB died, I think he was about 40.
Yeah, he was
If I'm
young.
not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
young.
And the reason why I was thinking about that is because I was watching the Wu-Tang Saga thing, on Hulu, and then I
Yeah.
had right before the pandemic hit, I saw Wu-Tang in the city, and
Oh, for
they
real?
have and they have his son performing with them now, like doing
Yeah,
all his
Little Dirty
parts and all that.
Bastard, right?
Yeah, which is cool because
Yeah.
he take it seriously, like he mannerisms, everything. But not to get off topic, it's just in terms of substance use, this is just another example of somebody that we saw struggle in public. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like Master P has been very vocal lately about there needs to be a rap council and this and that. I have my views on that, but I understand the sentiment of what he's saying in terms of some type of services, or not services, but you know what I mean, some type of availability of platform for people to reach out and offer somebody support, or for them to reach out for support. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, it's just obviously it's sad. But what did you think? Like, how did I don't want to say how did he impact you? Obviously, we same generation, but you know,
No, it's the comparison that you mentioned between him and old Dirty, I think is appropriate. for the reason that when you think of both of them, you think of energy, right?
Right, right,
You
right.
think of wild energy, like you mentioned, seeing them at Summer Jam and at Homecoming. I had the opportunity to see them at the Hard Night Life tour. Like you remember the
Okay.
backstage documentary that they did.
Right,
So
right.
so I saw them like right across the bridge. It was called the Tweeter Center. It's now at the Camden Waterfront. But I saw them um on the Hard Not Life tour with Jay-Z and Meth and everybody. And man, like, listen, like, you want to talk about intense shows and just
Right,
the
right, right.
energy
He
that
gave you
that
everything he
X
got.
brought. Yeah, like he left it all out there on the stage, man. And like, when he was up there, like you were in it. Like he's probably one of the best shows that I've ever seen.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, I mean, he was it. Like he was raw, he was talented, he was a showman. He embodied so much. And I'm happy that I got an opportunity to actually see him in person. And you're right, man. It's he was very upfront and very, what I mean, honest about his battles with addiction,
Right.
right? It was something that he was very forthcoming about, and he acknowledged it. He acknowledged that this was an ongoing thing, and even I think there were certain time frames when he talked about it, like in various interviews, that he acknowledged that, like, listen, I'm not doing well in this battle. Like, I'm currently
Right.
using, or like this is the battle I'm gonna have to deal with. He said, even when I'm clean, I'm still losing. Like, I'm still fighting it. And so I felt like that was one. I appreciated his honesty because he personified, he laid it out really quite frankly, like, listen, this is an ongoing addiction. This is how serious it is
Right.
for me. And I appreciated that. And yeah, I see the importance of, especially just with the rap community, right? Like we talked about a few episodes ago about the mental health in hip hop. However, like again, it's a specialized population because it's not like a lot of them have, along with their rap careers or with their deals, they're not getting insurance, right? They're not
Right,
getting
right.
all these other different things that say you or I, or maybe your typical or normal person who has a 9 to 5. All right, well, I got this insurance. I can go see somebody, right? So it's a little different. They're on the go. They have a lot of different moving pieces and a lot of different factors, and not that's not making an excuse. But it's just so many different things to take in consideration. A lot of things are getting thrown at them. They have a lot of accessibility to a lot of different vices, drugs, sex, all types of things, right? The stress, performing city to city. So I mean, I can't imagine what that's like, right? I can't imagine having all that thrown at you at one particular time. So, just kind of seeing his battle with addiction kind of play out in the public, you know.
I mean, along those lines, see, that was, and again, that was one thing, like, and I look at like certain artists, and I look at kind of like, now at my age, I look at like why I like some of them, right?
Mhm.
And Tupac is my favorite rap artist, above and beyond anybody, right? For a bunch of different reasons we ain't gonna get into. But DMX, the reason why I love Tupac was because of the transparency he offered you, right? Highs and lows, wins and losses, like to a
Mhm.
point where the vulnerability is what I'm really talking about, right?
Yeah.
And X was kind of the same way. Like that whole, I mean, he talked about it, but that whole slipping song was about addiction. You know what I mean? And not, and I don't mean like not saying there's a good part, but he was really illustrating the fall of it. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And it's like I just watched the interview a couple of days where he was talking about, an older person, like, basically, kind of telling him he was smoking weed, and he was smoking, weed mixed with crack, mixed with coke, when he was 14 years old. So we talking about that young, you know what I mean? Mixed with the mental health issues and whatever was going on in his life. You're talking about people that for him to overcome all that, and make it to where he did make it, it's an amazing thing, but it's also a double-edged sword, right? Because we've seen a lot of artists, make it to the peak, and they just can't get over that hump of those demons, right? Of addiction.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things. But I again, like, I admire him because, again, he wasn't hiding. He wasn't one of these people that, you know, they said he had exhaustion every 4 months, and he was at Passions in California, right? No disrespect to them, but
Right.
that's where all the rich people go. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
They check in there for a week, and then, you know, they're not tired anymore all of a sudden. But he was struggling in public, you know, and trying to go to rehab and do the hard work and answering those questions. So kind of using his life as a platform for other people to learn from. So you got to admire that, in addition to the work ethic and all the other things, you know.
Yeah, you gotta admire it, you gotta respect his candid, and you you look at it also, and you touched on it a little bit, was the trauma that he talks about,
Right.
right? If you talk about, like you said, it plays out in the lyrics of Slippin'. He's talked about it in multiple interviews they did, and he talked about it in the Rough Riders documentary that came out on BET a few months ago. I mean, and it made me kind of think, because he had a long history of not only just being like locked up when he was young, but and being in group homes, right? Because his mom, you know, abandoned him for that real young age.
Right.
So you're looking at, he's going through that, living with his grandma, living in multiple relatives' houses, going to group homes, and he was getting into a lot of fights and things. And that's trauma, right? That's abandonment. Like, so he had a lot of these issues thrusted upon him. He got exposed to a lot of different chaos and trauma and all these different types of situation at a young age. And unfortunately, you know, you see it, I've seen it, how a lot of these kids, you know, they're not given really a good chance from the very beginning, given their circumstances. So, given what he's been through, like, that's why I even looked at him even more as a strong individual, because he's an outlier, right? What he was able to accomplish despite everything that he was exposed to, like, he was able to overcome that, and still at the same time he's still battling these things, which makes perfect sense, because what did he go through, right?
Right.
So, like, for him to be able to go through that and you know, get to the point where he was, I think hopefully people are able to learn, you know, from what he experienced, the way it played out, and understand that, like, listen, you know, this is not a game, right? It's really not
It's
serious. I mean, he's a strong dude for him to get to where he was, but not everybody does. There are a lot of people that went through what he went through and didn't have the same turnout.
Well, I mean, it's a good lesson about trauma for
Right.
people, right? Because, see, this is the thing, like, and you talked about institutions and all those things, and it's like, you know, some of us work with child welfare, you know, services. We worked with them in the past. And the thing is, like, people, the one thing people don't, when people think about trauma, most of the time they think about, like, you know, being shot or being robbed or being in an accident and all of that. And that's, I understand that, you know, but most of the people, a lot of the people that we treat and that we're talking about, it's with situations like what he's talking about. It's developmental trauma. So we're talking about, like, when you rupture somebody's attachments to their primary caregiver that early in life,
Mm-hmm.
and they're out of home in a placement. Well, I don't care if it's grandma, I don't care if it's a group home, that impacts them in a way that you don't necessarily heal from that. You know what I mean? Because those attachments are ruptured, and you don't get that emotional attunement from a caregiver that not normal people, but that a normal quote unquote environment would provide you with. So everything is gonna, your idea of being protected, your idea of safety is gonna change. Your idea of how you interact with people in your interpersonal relationships, it's all gonna be affected by that. How you soothe yourself, right? How do you handle disappointment? This is, people don't just become explosive and angry and violent for no reason, right? When we look back at them and they all have these histories, there's a reason why. Because when you take somebody out of their home that early and you rupture their attachments, and they're not allowed to have that nurturing emotional attunement that most of us had,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of problems. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah,
that just sets the basis, you know?
yeah, it's trauma informed behavior, right? It's a situation where, and he said it himself. I saw him. I was watching the Drink Champs interview that he did a few months ago, which I'm happy he did. You know, before he, you know, he left us. Was that he said, listen, when I got this money, he said, listen, I'm blowing through. He's like, because man, he's like, all of a sudden I had nothing, to now all of a sudden I have everything. And he was like, listen, this is my chance. He said, I'm gonna go do a whole bunch of things given his money. He said, because I don't know when it's gonna get snatched from me, right? And so that just correlates with what you said. When you're going from place to place to place, you don't have stability, right?
Right.
You're getting exposed to all these different environments. You're getting all these people are coming in and out of your life, all these different things, right? It's like, look, I'm gonna get what I can get, and I'm gonna do what I can do with what I have. And I'm gonna keep it going, right? So that's what
Right.
it looks impulsive, and it looks, you know, crazy or whatever other different terms people want to throw around when they're looking at it from the outside in. But just like you said, when you look at his history and you look at what he didn't have, and then when he did have something that was quickly removed or taken from him, yeah, you know, it makes a lot more sense when you're looking and you're conceptualizing it from that framework. It's just like, okay, it makes sense. So, you know, again, like what he was able to accomplish given what he was experienced, I mean, is nothing short than miraculous.
I was just checking something before I said it. That's why I was looking over there. I wanted to check something before I said it. But again, like what you was talking about, right? And he's talked about having bipolar disorder before.
Mm-hmm.
It's fairly well documented from what I see, right? And it's like, again, you got substance abuse issues, you got bipolar disorder, you got this trauma from childhood, you know what I mean? So all the stuff that you're talking about, again, he has money, right? The impulsivity, right? He got 17 kids, right?
Yeah.
How many times DMX, remember, you don't remember when they took away, I think they took away his license or something in Arizona because he had like
multiple.
30 tickets or something crazy.
Yeah, multiple run-ins and things.
Right. So you see a person, you know, who is struggling, you know, but again, when you wrap it in that lifestyle, it's a rap star getting caught driving fast. It's a rap star with a lot of women, right? It's a rap star blowing through a lot of money, right? But you unwrap all of that surface, you know what I mean? Wrapping paper, for lack of a better term. If it wasn't a rapper, these would be classic signs of something else, right? So, well, all I'm saying is, and we would look at the addiction as, okay, he might be perhaps dulling some of the symptoms of bipolar disorder, not the mania. You know what I'm saying? He's dulling those symptoms with the alcohol and whatever else he's using to manage them. You know what I mean? And then it all fits together, you know, but you see a person that's struggling is the bottom line. I'm not trying to diagnose him because he's not my patient, but these are things that are public that we've seen, right? So you put all of those things in a bowl together, bipolar disorder, addiction, and unlimited funds. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna put you just wait for the explosion. Right. You know what I mean? So situation, but it's one that we've seen a lot, right? I mean, if we look at in the world of rock music, we've seen it over and over and over again. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. You know?
Yeah, it's again, it was tough. The fan in me and the clinician were both always rooting for X. When you hear different run-ins and his bouts in rehab or in treatment, was always rooting for him to recover and for him to get the help that he needed, because unfortunately I don't feel like, I mean, again, I don't know him personally, I don't know all of his treatment history, but you know um you know it didn't seem like he was getting, I think, the treatment that was, that he deserves, given who he is and the person that he is. Because he seemed to be just a genuinely good, loyal person, right? To his friends, his family, and people.
Right.
You always root for people, right? You always want to see people that are struggling with these things, especially given their background and their history. You want to see them get well, right? You want to see them get to a place where they're doing well, psychologically. And unfortunately, again, there are so many different reports that have come out of what caused the heart attack and so on and so forth. And you got to really be careful about what source is accurate and what's not. I'm just, I'm happy we got an opportunity, to hear his music, man. He's definitely left an impact on the world, not just hip hop, but just overall. He was an icon. And again, thoughts and prayers go out to his family and anyone that he's he had dealings with and any people that he's touched. And we'll see, as the upcoming information comes out. But the dude was an icon, man. So he lives on through his music. So, we'll continue to rock out to that X.
Definitely, definitely. I think that's a good place to leave it on that one.
So staying with the substance abuse, again, COVID is the most salient thing that's going on because it's something that we're living with. So, an article came across that jumped off the page for me, and it talked about since we're about a little over a year into this pandemic so far, and an article came across saying that since
Mm-hmm.
last spring, since the coronavirus forced shutdowns and ushered in stress and isolation and total financial upheaval, there has been a 20% increase in fatal drug and substance abuse overdoses. So the numbers were it's been 81,000 deaths in the past 12 months. That's the highest that it's been in any one U.S. single year. 81,000. What's in 12 months? So, yep, 81,000 deaths. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
that's
about
crazy.
that?
I mean, when I read it was the highest number recorded in a single year. That was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
81,000 people. That's. I mean, when you start breaking it down by month, too, a lot of people. What I mean, it's just an enormous number. And then when they were saying ER visits up 45% in the pandemic, that I could a little bit more because the doctor's offices might not be as accessible. But it's just crazy because, in the time of the pandemic, we know, people experiencing depression, stress, we know just from liquor sales and marijuana sales, that substance use, legal substance use is up, right? So individuals are self-medicating or, recreationally using, whatever you want to call it. And then we see this number. So, there could be a relationship there. But I just think it's crazy that with all of this going on, you got the stress, isolation, people experiencing depression, anxiety, you got the increase in the substance use, and then you got programs shutting down,
Right.
all at the same time. That was kind of the part of the article that made me think, because everything else, it kind of made sense, But then when they started talking about, okay, AA programs are shutting down, that was crazy to me, either because of physical space, or just because like they couldn't accommodate people got to be left outside, or just programs getting cut. Like that, it's one of those things where it's like, you can understand it. Not saying I want that to happen, but you see stores closing, all types of, so you can understand it. But unless somebody tells you, you look at that as an essential service. At least me, that would never really close. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That was kind of what stood out for me. What about you?
Yeah, because you know what, you tend not to think about the intangibles, right, or the ancillary things when they were saying like all these offices and things were shutting down, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
you only think about medical offices, so people aren't able to go in and see their physician one-on-one. But like in our line of work, you have support services, you got support resources. So when you have support groups or you got AA or NA, you're right, like these are places where, okay, in the medical office you can switch, they have the capability to go virtual, right? So they can,
Mm-hmm.
something that they've already been working on kind of slowly but surely. COVID kind of just sped that up.
Right.
Most AA and most NA don't work like that. That's not their framework. So now since you got that situation, it's like, okay, now treatment has probably just ceased to exist or just stopped abruptly. So all
Yeah.
of those support and those things that people were counting on to get them through the day, because you have some people that are hitting 2 meetings a day, right?
Right. And
And we're
that's
not
that's how they structure their day.
exactly right. And we're
Yeah.
not saying that support groups or AA meetings and NA. We're not saying that that's the same thing as treatment, but it's a hell of a lot beneficial support that people are counting on.
Oh
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Especially when you're thinking about, people that are battling heroin addiction, right? The methadone clinics, right? So now you can't have as many people in the clinic or in the office due to spacing and all these other different things. So those people aren't getting their treatment. So if they're not getting their methadone, or they're not getting their Suboxone or what have you, yeah, you're these all these issues are going to start to take place. So it's like you have two health issues combining, right? You already have the epidemic of the heroin epidemic and the substance abuse. Now throw in the COVID-19.
Right.
And so now you got a whole bunch of things, and it was just, things got intertwined. And unfortunately, I felt like, and the article mentioned this also, but yeah, I feel like the heroin epidemic or the substance use epidemic took a backseat to COVID, which I understand, right? I
Right,
mean,
right, right,
understandably so.
right.
However, again, it impacted it in such a way where I think a lot of people didn't kind of really think about those things.
I mean, listen, that's an interesting point that you kind of brought up because uh, just kind of looking back on my experience, with a lot of individuals, going through those issues in that population is like people that are committed like to their like treatment and to their recovery,
Mm-hmm.
they do hit those meetings daily and weekly. And it's like they structure their days around them and unconsciously or consciously, they may be going to that meeting so that they don't go to a bar or a liquor store or to a club or to their friend's house. So I get it. You know what I mean? And what you were saying, kind of made me just think about like, that saying, like one day at a time. You know what I mean? So it's like when you got people that are that vulnerable, they don't have a month, a week, a year to wait for services. You know what I mean? Because if they can't find that support, their own history will tell you that they'll find it somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had a question for you though, because you got um, more experience, way more experience with me than me with that population. What you think about virtual therapy? Like they was talking about the effectiveness of it. So what you think of it in terms of that
Um,
population?
I think it's good. You're talking like for individual, I think it works. I've, being a part of a private practice, I've been able to participate in it. And it works.
Okay.
I think it's convenient for both parties as opposed to, because you never know anyone's situation where they got to get to an appointment
Well, I
evening
mean,
show.
with that population.
With that population, if they have the resources, I feel like that's maybe more the question, right? Like I don't want to paint the addiction or people that are experiencing substance use. I don't want to paint them with a broad brush. But
Mm-hmm.
some of them, depending on their SES, may not have the resources. I mean, we,
Okay.
we we expect everybody to have like a smartphone or different things, but not everybody does, right? Like if we're thinking about the population in Kensington, right? That's a like in
Right.
Camden, like that's a lower SES population. They may not have the resources to do a virtual. So
That's a
that's
fact.
kind of my concern, where they may not have the opportunity or the resources to do so, right? To continue their treatment. I think it's a plus because okay, now they don't have to worry about how am I going to get to this appointment. So it's convenient in that sense where they can do it from their house or the car or wherever they're able to get reception or service. My
Right.
only concern is, will they do they have the resources to do so, right? Do they have the technology to do so? I mean, most do, I would imagine, but like again, if you go into these areas where a lot of the epidemic is taking place, like I said, Kensington, Camden, not everybody does. A lot of people are on a fixed income, a lot of people are on disability, so they're trying to make a little bit, they're trying to make a lot with a little bit.
Right.
So if they have the resources to do so, I think it works for them, but if not, it may not be. And unfortunately, we were just talking about it, like we mentioned with DMX, is the accessibility, right? So I think that's something that also contributes, right? Like you said, if someone doesn't have a meeting, right, because it's that sense of community. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the bigger part, where I don't know if a lot of AAs were able to kind of adapt into the sense where we can do virtual meetings. Maybe some
Right.
can, maybe in certain neighborhoods, right? But not all of them are able to say, hey, well, we can either meet outside or we can do virtual, just kind of given the thing where it's anonymous, right? So you can't go around maybe necessarily sharing emails and different things to kind of have that happen. So, but it's available, like especially like in Jersey, when everything else was shutting down, what was essential that was open, quote unquote, liquor
The
stores.
liquor store was open.
Right. The liquor stores are open. And when
Liquor
I
store.
mean these things were packed, right?
Yeah, man.
So, you have people, like you said, that have accessibility, boredom. If they can't drink at the bar, then let me go get this, right? And like you said, if people, their history tells them that they don't have that community, they don't have a sponsor, they're not able to reach their therapist or clinician, unfortunately, they may resort and fall back or relapse on what is open.
Yeah, we're gonna fall back on old habits.
Right.
You know.
And so, yeah, I mean, then
I mean,
people
that's a
experiment. Like even the working class, are going to experiment with stuff, right? So whether it be liquor or whether it be a different drug, if you're at home and you're isolated, and you're not able, it's like I'm used to drinking or using this. Let me experiment with this. Let me go on some harder liquor than this, just because you
yeah,
have time and availability.
yeah, man. Boredom, man. That's what they say. Idle hands, right?
That's true. So, um, I'm hoping with a lot of the vaccines rolling out that a lot of places are opening up. That's where I'm more hoping that the establishments that start to reopen or the
Right.
treatment centers, right? I'm hoping that they're able to get folks in because 81,000 is a lot, man. That's a lot in 1 year.
Well, hopefully they are, because I mean, lately, I mean, they've been trying. I mean, same way we've been trying in terms of adjusting. So
Hmm.
some of them I know have been trying to do stuff by phone
Right.
and Zoom and this and that. And there's limited effectiveness. The same way it's limited effectiveness with all the therapies you're doing virtually because you're not, But at the end of the day, I think it's really just about if you talk to the clinicians, I mean, me included, I don't think it's really not saying I don't think it's about treatment, but I think it's more so about continuity of care right now,
Right.
and just kind of like keeping those lines of communication open until we can get back to normal and trying to, spot emergencies. That's really the best we can do right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like if someone's able to get virtual, especially for this population, because like you said, it's consistency, right? It's continuity. And you mentioned it earlier, they go by one day at a time. Well, with COVID, everything was thrown off, right? It was uncertainty. You didn't know what tomorrow was going to bring. You didn't know what
Right.
it was going to look like. So for someone or a population of people that are like really focus or need that structure, because when chaos was going, this is when things went off the rails for them. So if they are able to
Right.
get a clinician every week, every couple of days or so, whether it be virtual or whether it be by phone, and that helps, that brings them some form of structure and that support that they need, I'm all with it, man.
All right. All right. So the next article we got is from Well and Good. It's about relationships, something we all kind of go through. This one specifically is like how to stop ruminating after a breakup. So we've all experienced a breakup. I know I've experienced one. I know you probably experienced. Well, you probably been doing the breaking up, in your life.
Hey,
You know
hey, bro. Hey,
what I
listen,
mean?
man. Listen. That shit's
But I'll take that one. I've experienced a breakup or two. You know
so have
what I
I,
mean?
bro.
So on serious note, they were kind of just talking about the repetitive thoughts that come along with it, right?
Right.
Being on the end of the end of a breakup, I guess, where you weren't the one expecting it, right?
Mhm.
So just talking about thinking about that person and not being able to get that person off your mind. And they were just talking about like your brain and how when you get to focusing on something, your brain will like replay things, especially things that kind of like hurt you or bother you, disappoint you, frustrate you. And how it's somewhat of a survival mechanism because things that hurt us, we think about them so that they can't hurt us in the future, right?
Right.
But we also know that it can become maladaptive if we start ruminating about that person or we start ruminating about certain things, right? So they were just kind of talking about, some of the problems associated with that is, it's another person, right? So the person breaks up with you, and the reason why you kind of feel so vulnerable and hurt, or whatever words you want to, subscribe to it, is because, you can't control kind of that person's movements, behaviors, thoughts, and you don't have access to them either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that lack of control and vulnerability is kind of what sets the stage for spinning people out of control. So, I mean, I've seen people go through bad breakups. You know what I mean? So, depending on how you handle that is kind of the most important part. So that's part of what the article was talking about too, just how you can kind of handle a breakup, and to stop thinking about that person. So what did you think about the article before we get into the tips?
Yeah, so I like the fact that, one, I mean, we've all, like you said, we've all experienced it on some level or to some extent. And yeah, like that's the most frustrating part of a breakup, right? Is that the thought process, or the ruminating, or the repetitive thoughts that continue to run through your mind. And what I liked about the early part of the article is that it talked about, one, it normalizes it, right? So it says this is typical, right? It's frustrating to go through that process, but it's a typical response to an event, right? Like our minds naturally go into and try to ruminate and think about issues that they can't understand, or that
Right.
they can't comprehend. So it's like, why did my partner break up with me? Why did my partner cheat on me? Why don't they like me? Whatever the case may be, right? So absolutely, your mind is gonna go into that, and it can, and like the article said, it can result from anxiety. It can result from trauma. It's like it wants, like you said, to keep replaying so it won't happen again, right, for the future.
Right.
So I think that was really key, that it brings up, like, yeah, breakup involves two people, right? It's two parties. So you have a situation where you have your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and then you have other thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of the other person, that you can't control them, and you don't know what their thought process is, right? And that's the thing that drives you fucking crazy, is that,
That
you see what I mean? Like, yo, why doesn't this person see it the way that I see it?
that's what's going on. And again, why don't they see it the way you see it, right? Because at some point in that person's mind, they decided that was it. At the end of the day, to be cut and dry, right? They
Right.
decided that was it, right? And of course, you have the disappointment that people have to deal with. But I think even more than the disappointment is the unanswered questions that people have, right? And I think one of the issues that people have is, and I kind of had more, I think when I was younger, is that, like, you personalize it all the time, right? The tendency is to personalize it, right? So it's like it's about you, you know what I mean? So what did you do? What don't you have? What do they have? What does he got? You know what I mean? When in reality, it might have just dumped you. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the tendency is to personalize it, right? And we've all gone through stages where we've grown apart from people, right? And it's not necessarily easy to explain, right? And how I like to explain it is like, listen, the things that I wanted in a female or partner in high school was different when I was 17 than the things I want now. You know what I mean? Fault everybody, and I'm not saying you can grow old with your sweetheart and grow old together, but a lot of people, they grow up and they change, and what they want changes. You know what I mean? So I only bring that back to say, a lot of times people personalize breakups when it might not necessarily be all about you all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and in addition to what you're saying, I think it also brings up a lot of residual from what maybe someone experienced in previous relationships, or what they experienced in the past. Maybe is right, core beliefs or other different things of that nature, where it's like, this person dumped me. Oh, that must mean I'm worthless, right? it must means that I'm unwanted, I'm unloved. It brings up a lot of those other different, negative thoughts that people have about themselves, and it reinforces those thoughts. Where like you mentioned, you don't have access to the other person, so the other person or the other party could just be like, look, they're just in a whole different thought process or whatever in their life. But like you said, you take it personal, and it's like, okay, there's a flaw, there's a damage effect with me, right? It had to be something that I did. I'm not good enough. I'm not all these other different negative, assessments and evaluations unfairly on yourself. And this is how, again, the thoughts and the why, right? Like the big one is like the why. Why is this happening? What, and then it just goes on from there. You just go down a dark hole and just unravel from there.
But see, this is the thing, right? It's all about perspective. And I'm not trying to make light of this situation, or anybody getting dumped or broken up with. But for a lot of people, right, what's the culmination of relationships and all that for a lot of people in this country or culture? What's the culmination to you of a relationship?
I mean, it's that value, that sense of belonging.
Nah, I mean, like, what's the top? Like, what's the mountain? Top of the mountain.
Oh, what, you get to, like, you mean like marriage and stuff?
Boom, marriage is the top of the mountain, right?
Right.
And the majority of people in this country don't practice polygamy, right? And I'm not saying I'm an advocate for it. So which means people are gonna have one partner, right? So why would logical people think that the majority of people that they're gonna date, they're gonna end up with? If you're gonna marry one person, that means that majority of your relationships are gonna what? Fail, right?
Right.
So logically, dating experiences are gonna be experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, people may say I sound callous, but that's a fact. For most people, if you're lucky, you're gonna have one relationship that lasts, and you're gonna get married to that person, which means all of the other relationships did what? They failed. So I think a lot of times individuals might put too much into one individual relationship. Not saying that you have one foot in, one foot out, but when you go work at a job, you don't necessarily go to the job and be like, yo, the first job I get is gonna be the last job I have. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Because it's a fact, bro. You don't go to the pizza store and you be like, yeah, this pizza good. I'm gonna eat this pizza for the rest of my life. That's not a fact. You don't do that. You understand? So why so again, people lose that perspective. If we were talking to our children or nieces and nephews and they were in their 20s or teens, and they were talking to us like, yeah, I want to be with this person for the rest of our life, and their eyes was big, what would you tell them? You'd be like, enjoy your relationship. I know that it's nice, but you're gonna hit them with that old wise wisdom, and you're gonna be like, 5 years from now, baby, you might have met a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people, this is my humble opinion, but I think sometimes people, put a little too much, into it.
Well, unfortunately, in relationships, logic kind of goes out the window, right? We're not, we're not exactly operating. We're not operating in our wise mind, are we? You see what I'm saying? Like, not until you get older, right?
Everything I just said was, yeah, you're right.
Right, like, because it's like you said, like, you got to get that experience, right? You have to get that experience of all these other different relationships that, unfortunately, some of them you're going to get wrapped up in because you're not thinking about it logically. You're just thinking about it with your emotional mind. But by the time you're a little older, you've hopefully gone through different relationships and things. Now you're operating in your wise mind where you're like, okay, you're looking at it from both senses as opposed to like, because that's one of the things that most people, either in personally or even like, clients that I've worked with, is that they're just like, they put, like you said, so much emphasis or so much investment and time into a relationship. And when it ends, it's so difficult because they're just like, well, I it's all for nothing. I did this and I put so much time in here. Like, yeah, you did. And it's not all for nothing. You learned something from it. But like you said, it's why did they want me? We had so much, and they get so attached to the time aspect, and that they were in love and all these different things, that now, like you said, they have no idea what that other person's thought process is and where they're at. Now they're hung up on that. They're hung up on the why part, right?
Right.
Why am I this? Why am I that? So, absolutely, like, we're not, the logic goes out the window. Rational goes completely out the window. And so when I was looking at some of the tips, I was on board for the majority of them. So, to run through, it says how to stop ruminating over a breakup. And the first one was to normalize your experience. So it says to acknowledge and thank your mind for wanting to solve and understand, and remind yourself that this experience is normal. I'm with that, because absolutely, it's like practicing that acceptance approach, right? Where it's like, yeah, you should, just what you've gone through. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's okay to understand that, like, you're gonna have some ruminating thoughts. You're gonna have some existing feelings and things. So I'm with this, where it's like normalize your experience in the sense of accepting that, yeah, you're gonna feel, or you're gonna have some of these uncomfortable thoughts.
And accept the fact that's what I just said. And I know I served it a little bit cold, but listen, it's what I just said. It's like, you got to realize you're probably not the only person that's been broken up with this month.
Right.
So I mean, that's normalizing the experience, right?
It
Because
is.
it may sound foul coming from me, but that's what your brother, your sister, your girlfriend, is going to tell you. They're going to be like,
Yeah.
well, you know. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so the next tip, they said reframe and change the thought, right? You know, that's semi-effective, especially when your feelings are hurt. That's gonna
Mhm.
it's kind of hard to make yourself think like, oh, he or she lost out on a good thing, especially if they broke up with you. So that's a
Yeah,
little bit,
I feel like with this one, they should put a little asterisk, or maybe parentheses, where it's like, change your thoughts is very different from controlling your thoughts, right? Because I feel like that's what a lot of people try to do. They try to control their thoughts, because they're uncomfortable, they're ruminating, they're repetitive. And the
that's a
main
fact.
thing, yeah, and the main thing that I always tell clients is that you can't control your thoughts. Like, you can't. There's no way. Your thoughts are always going. If there's a white cup sitting on the table and I tell you don't think about the white cup, what are you going to think about? You're going to think about the white cup. That's what happens,
Right,
right?
right.
So when people are like, I don't want to think about her. I don't want to, I hate, listen, you're going to have these thoughts, right? So I get the point, as like, changing your thoughts is very different than controlling your thoughts. And so going, like, shifting your thoughts, is the easiest way to do that, is distracting yourself, right, with helps with other different healthy activities, right?
Right.
Watching TV, a movie, going to work out, hanging with your friends, other different things that'll distract you from the relationship or what you were thinking about. So I think that, in that sense of changing your thoughts and not trying to control your thoughts, because if you're trying to control your thoughts, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. It's going to be real difficult for you.
One thing on this list that I agree with is kind of when they said, like, decide how you want to change, right? Like, how you want to come out of it,
Right.
right? So I guess one thing I can say is, every time I've had one of those experiences, it's like you said, whether it's working out, whether it's picking up a new hobby, whether it's, and of course, in the back of your mind, it's probably part of it is like, yo, I'm gonna make myself better than
Yeah.
you, and you
Yeah,
gonna
it's
see,
time to hit the gym. This is what we
right,
about to do. But
right. You know what I mean? The next time you see me,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah, the glow up is real. I got you. Don't even worry about it. you know?
but because that's a person in kind of internally rebuilding their self-confidence, right?
Mhm.
If you're working out harder, you're like, I'm gonna do 5 more push-ups, not because you're gonna go stand outside the person's house, but because you trying to make it, you're trying to improve your self-image, you know what I mean? And maybe, whether you're going to attract somebody else or not, whether you're ready for that is something different, but just in terms of improving yourself. So I think that's a good one. And I think a good along those lines is they were talking about like activities and events, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important, like when people experience like breakups and stuff like that, that they immerse themselves in different like crowds and different
Yeah.
people. You know what I mean? Not only to just meet. I'm not even implying that like a romantic relationship has to come out of it. But again, you're going through a different experience, improving yourself, and for all you know, you're better for you might be, you know what I mean? Um,
I, I,
not
yeah.
married, right? And couples like that,
What I it,
always, not that they always, but you good?
yeah, no, it was breaking up a little bit.
A
Yeah.
little live. Yeah, go ahead.
So what I was thinking, they kind of touched on it a little bit, but it was like lessons that you learned from the breakup, but it was like changing how you want to approach dating. And so I wanted to expand on that, is like kind of acknowledging the part that you play, right? What's your responsibility now outside of like you being in an abusive relationship where
Right, right,
there's
right,
no rationale, no excuse for that out of safety. I mean, it's also looking at, okay, what part in this did you play, right? Because we're all evolving, right? And
right,
nobody's perfect in any relationship, despite what we think, right?
right.
It is looking at, okay, well, what
Every,
part?
every time somebody broke up with me, I deserved I
Hey,
deserved
man, hey, bro, I'm
I
just
deserved it.
you,
Listen,
hey, listen,
I
man,
was a
you
jerk.
preaching.
Like I was a jerk. I deserved it. You know.
Hey, man, listen, bro, listen, you preaching to the choir on this one, bro. Listen, I experienced the breakup of all breakups. I'm a divorcee, okay, so
All right,
listen,
all right. Well,
when that self
so you
reflection
know.
came in, I was just like, damn, yeah, she did the right thing.
Yo, man, like, listen, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not making light of it, but it goes to what we're saying, right?
Right.
Like what I was saying earlier. Like the fact that I can laugh now and look back at those experiences and laugh, right? It's because you build up on them. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
hopefully you're not making the same mistakes that when you was 20, you know, at 30 and 40, you know what I mean? So it like you said, like dating differently. And unfortunately, my humble opinion, I'm not a dating expert or anything like, but I think, you know, a lot of individuals will make mistakes when it comes to choosing partners, right? Because number one, they're not comfortable by themselves, right? So after that breakup, do you take time to do some self-evaluation? Because at the end of the day, there's a reason why that person rejected you,
Right.
right? Whether it be me, you, or anybody else. So if you want to put it all on them and say, yeah, they missed out on a good thing, then go ahead, you know. But if it starts becoming a pattern, man or woman, where everybody's missing out on this good thing, you know, and it's a good thing, then maybe you need to, there's some things that, you know, we all, you know, probably, you know, some edges we all need to smooth out, you know what I mean? So in
Exactly.
that sense of how you approach dating and how you interact with other people, that's why I'm saying people should kind of look at dating as more of an experience and not put it all into, you know, one person. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying?
So yeah, definitely working on yourself, and like you said, what part of it did you played, and like you said, switching up your approach. Um, we talked about this one again earlier, the replacing the why questions with the how or what questions. And so exactly. So taking a step back and looking at
Right.
it and saying, for example, how did X and Y happen? Or what did I notice when ABC occurred? Right. So as opposed to saying, why this, why me, all these different things, it's like reframing it and saying the why is like, okay, how did this happen? And what led to X, Y, and Z. So just kind of taking a step back and reevaluating things, and rechecking those questioning. Because why get you in that area where you feel stuck again, right? You continue to ask why. Now you're
Right.
continuing to spin your wheels, and it puts you in that engaging and wondering phrase. You know what I mean?
Right. And
So
it's not it's not really an action kind of thing. How is an action? Right? How am I going to get out of this? And where am I going from here? You
exactly.
know, the why is just kind of like you're gonna wallow in that why
Yeah, man. You go
for
you
a
go get
while,
you
you
go get
know,
stuck in that. But that's quicksand.
right? And you know, the reality of the fact is, it's just like what, you know, we tell kids, or you know, like you let somebody say something to you and ruin your day, and what, they down the hallway already, and you right here, you know, ruminating about what happened. You know what I mean? So we're not trying to dismiss it and say, like, you know, obviously people invest emotionally into relationships, so not saying that you could just turn the page, but it's more about taking some time afterwards, you know, so that you can answer those questions in time, you know, before you jump into something else, you know. And that goes for guys and females, you know.
Absolutely. And the next one was schedule rumination time. That's the last one. And I get it. It's it's kind of creating a space, kind of creating a time for you to ruminate. My thing about this is that I feel like some people it's you're gonna go into that deep hole, right? Like if you say like, oh, I'm only gonna schedule 15-20 minutes to dwell and ruminate on this, that 15-20 minutes is going to turn into an hour, right? Now
Yeah.
it's different like if you're doing an activity, like say you're working out, you're on the treadmill, you're going for your walk, and that's when a lot of the thoughts come back. All right, cool, you're doing it during that particular time. I just feel like some people may lose that balance of just kind of having it at one particular time. Like it's a difference between like understanding that you're going to experience these thoughts and feelings after the breakup, and then sometimes like, all right, I'm gonna have a space or a time for it, but you don't want to do that too often. That's my reservation with the scheduling time with it, is that you don't want to be like, what, every day at 2 o'clock I'm going to schedule my 15 minutes of rumination time over this relationship. It's like, nah, that's not healthy. So I get where the theory behind this. I'm just a little on that one a
I
little.
get the theory behind it. But I don't buy it. It seems like kind of like a ripoff of how to manage worry, like a strategy to manage worry, right? Like
Yeah.
make a worry list or something like that. So I get the theory behind it. So you know what I mean? I get why they threw it in, you know, but practically it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And people, it's not rumination, but people are going to get their emotional expression out over their iPhone, complaining about that person to their mother, to their homeboy, to whoever. So scheduling time for rumination is pointless. Like you know what I mean? Like you're gonna
It's
get
not very feasible. Yeah.
right. You know.
Yeah. So there you go. And staying with relationships, article that came across my desk that I thought was interesting was how to stop being a people pleaser and learn to say no. Right. And the reason why this jumped off the page for me is that that's one of the most difficult things that I see a lot of people struggle with. And it seems easy for people to say no, but it's not. A lot of people, you'll get that last minute text from one of your friends that, yo, can you pick me up and take me to the store, or drop me off? And before you know it, you said yes, and that person's hopping in your car. Or like somebody hits you up and say, yo, come out with us to the happy hour to so and so. It's their birthday. This is all pre-COVID, of course. You get that text, and then you respond immediately. Yeah, I'm there. Let me know. And then when you really your original plan was to go home and just chill and watch TV, right?
Right.
So if this is happening more and more frequently, then you may be in that realm as a people pleaser, and that's something that when I saw this article, it's people having difficulties saying no, right? Incorporating boundaries. And a lot of
Yeah.
people, unfortunately, it can really come at a severe expense of your health if you're always saying yes to people. And so, it can develop into a very serious and detrimental problem.
I mean, I listen. I'm like I don't really classify myself as one of these people, so I'm kind of looking from the outside in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, it depends on what role.
Right.
You know what I mean? As a graduate student, as an intern, I'm definitely a people pleaser because I'm trying to get high marks.
I need hours. We
You know
need
what I
hours,
mean?
Joe.
Right. We need hours. You know what I mean? But in general, no. I can say no. But when I read this article, I was thinking about some of the people I work with, right? And listen, man, especially like a lot of the hardworking people that are like the support staff that we work with, and just how everybody has a different style. So how some people will lean on them, you know what I mean, for things that they really could do on their own. You know what I mean? Like I'm not asking somebody to staple something that I can staple myself, respectfully.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I've been in a position as a graduate assistant where I had to staple 200 things. You know what I'm saying? I had somebody stopping by my office that had nothing to do. You know what I mean? And say, yeah, Jason, here, go do this. You know what I mean? Just because I was there.
You were there, right?
So again, I'm just saying I understand what it feels like to be in that position where kind of making the people, especially that are kind of higher than you in position, happy is kind of part of your job.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Unofficially or officially. And to get to the point, like the people that confide in you, like they go through a lot of stress, like pulling out your hair stress, not coming to work, wanting to come to work stress, blisters stress. And work should not do that to you. You know what I'm saying? So again, I've seen the effects of it, and
Absolutely.
I've experienced it in a certain position. But it's
Yeah,
one of these things.
it's always been one of those things where, and when I thought about this, I was thinking of especially like some people that I know, and then also like clients that when you read their charts or you see people, they get themselves in these really not so great situations, right? Where you kind of question their decision making, and they're like, "Oh, well, I had to pick up this from my cousin, and then this happened, or I got pulled." And you're looking at the decision like, "Well, why didn't you just say no?" Right?
Mhm.
And the part of the article that stuck out to me was that it looked at it like, well, a lot of people that tend to exhibit this behavior or have experienced a lot of dysfunctional environments where trauma or abuse may have occurred. And, it was an adaptive strategy for that time. So that kind of, for me, wasn't even, I turned that people pleaser kind of into like a peacekeeping, right? Because if you're in that
Right.
environment, you're saying yes to keep the peace, right? Whether it be physical or emotional, whatever the type of abuse the situation is. And because that became the learned response and you just got used to saying yes all the time, now you no longer need that strategy, but now it's become a peacekeeping tool because of like some of the things that you're afraid of if people do say no because of what you've experienced when people said no maybe in the past. So
Good.
the thing I think a lot of people run into, unfortunately, is that when you're used to always saying yes to people, you run a high probability of being taken advantage of, right?
Right.
Because people know who exactly to go to because they know they're always going to say yes, right? You
That's a
always
fact.
wonder, right? People always wonder, oh, the person always comes to me. Why do they always ask me? They're going to you because they know you're going to say yes. Like people know
Right.
who to go to go last minute. Oh, you know what? So and so will pick me up. Like I know they'll drop all and such. And so that's when it becomes a problem, like you were saying. Like that's when it becomes a situation where, it's at your expense. Your health is starting to decline. You're getting pulled in so many different directions because you're used to saying yes. And unfortunately, even family members, like family know what cousin to call. They know what sibling or whoever is always going to say yes more than likely, and that's when it turns into an issue.
Family is the best at it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, one thing, I mean, again, like some of these tips, I mean, they were fairly straightforward. I mean, I don't really, I'm not gonna say they were ineffective because they were correct, but implementing them is gonna be difficult. But one thing I think that people could benefit from is the one where they say consider like more of why you say yes, right? And it goes
Yeah.
into the explanation like you were saying, right? Because I think for a lot of people, just kind of that education of that aha moment or making that connection between like, why they have like some of these characteristics in terms of their interactions with other people would empower them enough to say no in certain situations. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like if somebody actually got it, like, yeah, I'm saying yes because, in this other situation, I do that more often because in this other situation, I was doing it so I could be seen in a positive light, or, and that provided me with safety and security or whatever, in whatever way, you know what I mean? But once somebody accepts that and understands that, then I think it's easier for them to say no to their boss, right? Because that's a whole different situation. You know what I mean? I think it'll be easier for individuals to apply. So I like that tip,
Yeah.
Consider more of why you say it.
Yeah, the self-awareness part is key in a lot of this because, like, yeah, like you mentioned, why are you saying yes? Like, are you doing this because is it coming from a genuine place? Like a lot of people say yes out of guilt because it's a situation where, oh, well, you know, maybe you didn't have a great relationship, whether it's like your, like you said, your family, maybe you had bad relationship beforehand, or it's one of your parents or your uncles, and you don't want to be looked at as being disrespectful, or you don't want to be looked at as whatever negative
Right.
light. So like, is this a genuine yes? Like, do you have other things to do, or did you already have plans and you're saying yes out of guilt? Right. Or is it a situation where it's like you're doing it because you want this person to do something for you later? That's not really a
Right.
genuine yes. So taking that step back and saying, yeah, why am I saying yes to this? Right? What's
Right.
genuine about this? And the other one I liked is that some people are so quick to say yes. Like it's okay for you to, take a step back and say, let me think about it or let me get back to you. Right. I think
Right.
that's something that
Right.
can be incorporated is like, let me check my schedule. Let me see. Let me text you back, or I'll let you know. And maybe that'll give you some time to kind of be like, yeah, you know what? Nah, I'm not gonna go through with it. So, but a lot of people are so quick to giving that pressured yes, and then now you find yourself in circumstances. So definitely putting boundaries in, incorporating boundaries, and it starts with no. The more you kind of practice saying no, um, and not having those thoughts, right? If I say no to somebody, what are they gonna think of me? Because I think that's something else that kind of
Right.
contributes to people always saying yes. And and I've always told some of my clients, if you say no, the person is not gonna like X you out of their life, right? I
Right.
guarantee you they'll come back the next time and ask
Right.
you again. So they may be upset with you temporarily because it's inconvenient for them. And so that's how I'm always thinking and telling them, you saying you putting yourself as a priority is good. You're just making it inconvenient for them, which is they're not going to be happy with. But don't worry, they'll come back around. They'll ask you another question again, or they'll ask you for something later.
Right. I mean, but it's about having that confidence to kind of implement that and actually do that.
Yeah. So yeah, but it comes with practice, like you said, gaining that practice of saying no, and practice makes perfect with that. But absolutely, people, especially in this day and age, is you got to protect yourself. You have to be selfish. Your priorities have to come first, because I don't know how you're going to help other people if you're overextending yourselves and then you're making yourself sick out of it. So, so boundaries, and that's something that's always an ongoing thing with people. So,
Fact.
we'll see. You know,
Word.
anything else come across the desk your way?
Now that's about it. That's about it for this week. Just again, we want to thank everybody for listening. Encourage everybody to leave comments. Please subscribe if you haven't. And again, we appreciate the time. And you already know, bro. You know what I mean? I'm about to get back to the grind.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So yeah, listen, subscribe, comment, watch. Again, we're on all podcast platforms. So continue to look out for us. We appreciate everybody's support and your feedback. And appreciate everybody being here. So signing off, Dr. J. I'll talk to you soon, bro.
All right, bro, no doubt.
All right.